Commissioner Terriani, will you lead us on the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to call to order the prison board meeting scheduled for Wednesday, February 19th, 2020. First order of business is a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opportunity for the public to address the board on agenda items only. I see no hands. Okay. We'll get into the motions. We'll start with,
Oh, you didn't want,
Agenda
Public
items. Okay, yeah.
this
Is it-
is an agenda issue.
okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Joan
Now I
Hoda, Joan Hodawanitz, 101 Penn Avenue, Scranton. With regard to 20-2011, the motion to review and approve the proposed policy for the implementation of electronic tablets. I looked at the draft, and in itself, the draft is fine. What I did not see addressed was, have you considered putting in the policy something which if an inmate does not know how to use a tablet, that there's some way, a training guide or somebody sits down with them and shows them how to use it? You don't make the assumption that everybody is tech savvy, because they're not.
When we get to that motion, I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about that, Joan,
Okay,
and
that
I'm
was the
sure
only thing I was curious about, because, it's the one thing that tends to get overlooked, is that some people may have questions how to use it, have never used a tablet before. I think it's a good idea to have the tablet. And as it stands, I don't have any objection for what is in the policy. It's just that I think you may want to consider adding that somewhere in there.
And we'll be discussing that at that
Okay.
time. Thank you,
Okay.
appreciate that. Okay, on to motion 20-2008, a motion to approve all current payables for the Community Correction Center and the prison. Do I have that a motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're going on to the reports, 20-2012. Mr. DeBilio?
Yes, the Controller's Office reviewed the prison inmate and canteen account reconciliations, which were prepared by the Prison Business Office for the month of November 2019, and found no discrepancies between the reconciliations and the bank statements. The balance in the inmate account was $452,154.11 as of November 30th, 2019. The balance in the canteen checking account was $409,782.08 as of November 30th of 2019. And in addition, as of November 30th, the canteen account owned two certificates of deposit, one valued at $15,000, the other at $132,107.67, which totals $147,107.67. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for the controller? Motion to accept his report.
Second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 20-2009, Mr. Jeffers.
Good afternoon, Board.
Afternoon.
Community Corrections Report for January 2020. Program totals. Male work release had 32 participants, and female work release had 7. Adult house arrest had 122 participants, and juvenile house arrest had 17. Item 2, our program's total revenues for the month of January total $59,433.80. Obviously, that is the year-to-date also, after only 1 month. Item 3, our program's expenses for the month of January total $97,919.12. Item 4, our program's completions. Work release had 3, house arrest had 42. Item 5, our programs violations, work release had 7 and house arrest had 11. Item 6, our vote programs warrants, work release has 7, house arrest has 4. And item 7, our budget report for the first month of the year. Overtime was at 14%, expenses at 7%, and revenue at 12%. We also enacted the GPS bracelets training at the end of January. We are currently putting those into production on all the new residents that are coming in. That completes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Jeffers? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We need a motion to approve Mr. Jeffers' report.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, report 20-2010, the Warden's report. Mr. Betty?
Good afternoon, Board.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
The in-house population, the average daily population for January was 680 inmates, 499 were county inmates. As of February 10th, we had 684 inmates, 588 were adult males, 96 were adult females, and we had no juveniles. The population of U.S. Marshal Service detainees on 210 was 170 individuals. The overtime out of county boarding and community service reports are attached. Staffing update, currently our correctional officer numbers break down to officers on shift, 174 full-time and 10 part-time. Out on workers' comp, 1, administrative leave, 3, and we have 3 part-time vacancies, for a total of 178 full-time officers and 13 part-time officers. FMLA, 45 officers have intermittent FMLA amounting to 25% of the officers. Budget as of January 31st, revenue was at 15% and expenses were at 13%. Inmates at or past their minimum dates, the number is 20. 10 have submitted home plans and are awaiting parole. 3 have no home plans. 3 have had parole denied due to unacceptable home plans or misconducts. And 4 have been remanded for the balance of their sentences. Extraordinary occurrence reports, there were 7 since the last prison board meeting. On January 24th, a county inmate was placed in the restraint chair after refusing to be moved from her cell to a suicide prevention cell. OC had to be used in order to attempt to gain her compliance. Also on January 24th, the county inmate was placed in the restraint chair after having had tied his underwear around his neck and expressing suicidal ideations. On the January 28th, the county inmate was placed into the restraint chair for his own safety after he was displaying signs of being intoxicated. January 31st, the county inmate was placed into the restraint chair after being resistant and screaming at District Justice Sieg while in the prison courtroom. On February 3rd, a county inmate was placed into the restraint chair after he cut his wrist and expressed suicidal ideations. February 7th, a county inmate was placed in the restraint chair after threatening staff and refusing to comply with staff orders. And on February 12th, several inmates refused to lock in when ordered to do so. The situation escalated to the point where responding staff had to administer OC spray and utilize our pepper ball gun in order to regain control of the situation. As a result of this incident, a county inmate and a federal inmate were placed into restraint chairs. PREA, there were 4 PREA investigations completed in the month of January. 1 was an inmate on inmate allegation of sexual misconduct. It was deemed founded. 3 were allegations of staff on inmate sexual misconducts. 2 were deemed unfounded, and 1 was deemed unsubstantiated. All completed PREA investigations have been forwarded to the district attorney's office, and this concludes my report.
Any questions for the warden? Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to accept the warden's report. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to go back to old business regarding the implementation of the electronic tablets. I know this was discussed in the past, and we continued it until today. I take it everybody's had an opportunity to review the policy?
Mr. Vice Chair, if I can update the board, I appreciate it.
Okay, sure.
We had an opportunity to meet with representatives of GTL on February 5th, 2020. This was the first meeting where any representative from law enforcement was consulted. It was a critical and necessary meeting, frankly should have taken place months ago, but it was beneficial and eased many of my concerns as district attorney as to the potential security gaps. And in addition, I've had the opportunity to review several policies from other larger counties who have implemented successfully the GTL program, as well as compare it and contrast it with the state prison system, which is different on many levels. It's not a pay-to-play, it's a one-time fee and one-time charges to the inmates. So equitably, it's fairer to the inmates, but not as lucrative to the state. With all that said, I have the three suggestions to address my concerns as district attorney, and they are as follows. One, the prison personnel should monitor the use and exchange for passwords. GTL has several systems in place to record who is using, but without anybody watching the use or monitoring the procedure, it doesn't do much good. And I believe it's imperative that the prison personnel implement a policy to monitor the use of the tablets where inmates are not freely exchanging passwords. The policy prohibits that, but there's no enforcement with it, and we know there are abuses with the current phone system in that regard. In addition, the policy should be supplemented to have the following language: that telephone, tablets, and secured messaging will be monitored for content. Again, we have the ability to do that when we know there's a problem, but no one's watching or actively monitoring the password exchanges and others using individual devices. Number two, the contract between GTL and the county, which currently exists, needs to be modified in order to make the county and the prison board immune for liability for the damages to the tablets. Currently, the contract is void in that regard, and it needs language to grant immunity to the county and the jail, as well as hold harmless the county or jail if these devices are damaged. They're bound to be damaged. The policy currently puts the burden on inmates who, frankly, are going to be limited in their ability to pay for these items, but we're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment and on the hook to pay for them if they're damaged, where it's simply an isolation in a contract that should have been in there from day one. We now have the bargaining ability to implement that before implementing the policy. And lastly, I believe victims' voices need to be heard here, and victim restitution needs to be a part of the payment before inmates are given iPad-like luxury to use. What the state has in place is that they impound 25% of the amount of money on the books for a prison inmate, and they pay that to victim restitution, court costs, and fines. The county does not have any such policy, and that policy should be in place. The state is limited at 25%. The county can actually assess more, but I think 25% and in line with the state's policy is a reasonable request to implement in order that victims' voices are heard and that inmates are not given the luxury of an iPad-like device without having to be accountable for the court-imposed fines, costs, and victim restitution. And so I would like the board's consideration in implementing that so that we pass a responsible tablet policy. I'm all for improving the quality of an inmate's life, but I think we need to do it by making a victim whole and doing it responsibly, that certain checks and balances are in place in order to adopt a responsible policy. Thank you.
Sure. Any other board member want to comment?
Mark, with regard to number 3, the victim restitution, can that be done as a separate policy as opposed to linked to the tablets?
So the state system does it with respect to any amount on the books. My understanding is that an inmate, through personal funds or through family funds, puts money on their account, and they use that for phone, they use it for snacks, and they will be using it to support movies and streamlining of music through GTL. So I don't think we complicate the system. I think we correct the system and assess it on the money on their books, and have a portion of that be paid first to their legal responsibility with court costs and restitution, and their obligation to victim restitution when it's ordered.
I understand. I'm saying, could that be accomplished in a separate policy as opposed to be included in the inmate tablet policy, so that this way it would be addressed across the board as opposed to those just using the tablet?
Yeah, I think it needs to be addressed across the board, but I think the opportunity to do this, and before we implement any policy with respect to the tablets, let's correct the ship. Let's correct the contracts that were held harmless and were not legally responsible for damages. Let's implement a policy that we have security of checks and balances, and let's make sure the restitution, court costs, and fines are paid before rushing to judgment and passing this policy for inmates. Now is our opportunity to do it. Certainly our opportunity with GTL when we have leverage to negotiate, because the contract, frankly, is already signed. It was signed in 2019.
Is number 10 on the inmate policy, does that satisfy you with regard to damaging of the tablets? Or
It does not, but I'll look at it.
it says an inmate who damages or misuses a tablet may be charged criminally. Damages to a tablet will be the financial responsibility of the assigned inmate or the person responsible for the damage.
Yeah, I think 10 needs to be in the policy, but it doesn't satisfy the concerns. So GTL would still have a potential claim against the county or prison. And the reality is, some of these inmates are indigent, and they're not going to have the ability to pay hundreds of dollars for the machine that is damaged in their control or that they damage.
But I think the hold harmless that you're looking for would have to be within the contract with GTL, not so much within the...
You're correct, that when I'm referencing the hold harmless and the indemnification, it would be to modify our existing 2019 contract with GTL while we have leverage with GTL in order to negotiate, because GTL wants this deal. It's a financial boom for them on the back of inmates that generates a significant amount of money to GTL. So our opportunity to negotiate that properly is now.
Okay.
You believe as a prerequisite to implementing the policy and distributing tablets, we should resolve the contract?
It's our only leverage is right now. Once we do it, the
Does anybody know
out of the barn.
when the contract is up? GTL, when it expires?
I believe 2021, but I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay.
But that contract is not with tablets at this point.
It does. It's
It does.
inclusive of any kind of electronic device, including the tablet. So the only contract in place would include tablets, and it was entered in 2019.
So that being said, our option in order to review and repair this particular contract now, or this approval now, would be to table this motion until we get further ahead?
That would be my position. Renegotiate the contract, get that in place, set a policy with the jail that is either included in our policy of tablets or as a separate policy once conferring with our Warden Betty on how they're going to monitor the exchange of passwords and the misuse of the devices, and then enter appropriate language that we assess the books that 25% is going towards costs, fines, and restitution.
Well, on that note, I would Make a motion to table this until the next prison board meeting.
Warren and Betty, will you come up here, please? I just would like you to address a couple of the concerns District Attorney Powell had. Maybe you can address them now. Would there be prisoner personnel there to monitor?
No, just like with the phones, the issue there is staffing. I mean, we have 650 to 700 inmates. They're all, not the entire population is unlocked at the same time, but when they're unlocked, everybody's out. There's a heavy telephone usage right now. I tend to look at the tablets in a way as they're more telephones. We don't have a staff member dedicated sitting there. We do find out about people who have either stolen somebody's PIN number or gave their PIN number to somebody. We usually find out from the inmate who had it taken from him. And other than that, we would have to hire somebody or ask GTL to provide a staff member at a cost to have somebody listening live or nearly live to a large number of simultaneous phone calls. I don't know. I got to be honest with you, Sheriff. I don't know how we would do that without multiple staff members.
I'm sorry. If there's a lesser alternative that it's done randomly, not with a full-time dedicated staff, but some check and balance, is that an option?
From my perspective, with my current staff, no, sir. I wouldn't have the staff members to dedicate to that. We would have to. I know that GTL does provide a similar service like that to other county facilities upon request, but nothing in the world is free. So I know it's going to come out of maybe come out of our commission or something along those lines. It'll be subsidized in one way or another.
And with respect to the training aspect, is there anybody, any ability to provide training to people who are not computer savvy, or does GTL offer that service in order to provide some inmates who may be not as familiar with tablets to train them to get them over the initial hurdle?
And yes, I mean, on the initial hurdle, you're absolutely right. GTL would be in there. They'd be on the blocks with our inmates showing them how to use this. But, 6 months down the road, I think my thought process when Joan was bringing that up was that I would probably have that start incorporating that. We have inmate workers there. They're called block workers. Make that part of their job is that their familiarity with that, so they can show other individuals that are housed in that same block. This is how you use this. We still have the phones on the walls, but this is how you use the tablet if you want to use it as a phone or to download music or access GED materials or whatever.
And could that be implemented much like the volunteers are given access to deliver books? Could we screen folks who are pre-qualified from a security standpoint to provide that training on an ongoing basis?
Yes, and I really like that idea, actually.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Warden, with regard to number 6, sorry. The second part says an inmate that voluntarily allows another inmate to use their personal tablet login credentials will be subject to disciplinary action. Is that like referencing exchanging passwords?
Yeah, I mean, the two ways that can happen. Number one is I steal it from another inmate, or that inmate gives it to me, whether he does it willingly or through an arm twisting kind of thing. But either way, when we discover that, we would obviously take action. We do that now with the telephone uses and stolen PIN numbers, and that does happen.
So it looks like the first part of number 1 of District Attorney Powell's concern is addressed, but the second part says he wants telephones, tablets, and secured messaging will be monitored for content. Is it in here somewhere?
Definitely the text messages. I know that GTL has equipment and they have the technology to be able to put in keywords and things like that, and that they get a notification, they can then provide us with that notification. I question the ability to do that kind of in a live telephone conversation. I don't think, I know that we have Tom Gibney here from GTL, that maybe he could speak to that, but I don't think they have the technology to handle that live if one of those keywords is uttered, for instance.
Can we add to the policy at number 19 that says that telephone, tablets, and secured messaging shall be monitored for content? Would you have any objection to that?
I'd have no objection to that at all.
And then with regard to the victim restitution, is there a reason why there's not something like that in place at your prison?
Yes, there is a law, and forgive me if I get the number wrong, but in the back of my recesses of my brain, I think it was Act 83 of some year that talks about restitution and court costs and fines. The issue is that over 50% of our inmates are not sentenced. They're pretrial detainees. You add in our U.S. Marshal prisoners, they're pretrial detainees for the most part. That's problem number one. Problem number two is identifying just who is sentenced and what those court costs are, and if that person has restitution. We don't get court orders from the courts about that. We know who's sentenced. Sometimes, however, we don't find out for a week or a month that an individual has been sentenced. So that'd be really hard for us to monitor due to the lack of paperwork coming from the courthouse to the jail. Again, we don't get a piece of paper saying Tim Betty has been sentenced, he has court costs of $1,100 and restitution of $2,000. We don't get that.
And if that gap was fixed via some form of policy between whether it be the district attorney's office or the court system and the prison, would you be open to implementing a separate policy?
If we have the information, yeah, because I think I could rely back on that. It's I'm talking about a 15-year-old law, and for some reason, just Act 83 is in my head. I apologize for not knowing the year, but there's something back there where we would be garnishing a certain percentage of the individual's money, but they have to be sentenced, and of course, there have to be associated court costs, fines, and restitution. But there is something there. It doesn't happen now because we don't get the information to make that determination.
If I may, Warden Betty, you are aware other counties do have that type of policy in place in county jails?
I'm assuming, I can't say that I'm aware. I'm assuming that they do. I don't see why.
And as far as the breakdown of how costs, restitution, and fines are distributed, that's all handled by our Lackawanna County Clerk's Office. It would simply be information for individuals who are sentenced, ordered to comply, which is a smaller percentage based on what you've said, right?
Yes. Yes.
Warden, maybe you've answered this in the past, and I just don't remember. I'm going to number 3 in the policy. Tablets are shared and are not permanently assigned to a specific inmate within a housing unit. Is there a time limit as far as the length of duration of time that an inmate could use it?
No,
It seems like-
there's not. Obviously, during the times that we allow it. And our initial thought process was that we were going to allow it in certain housing units. Some housing units would never get it. But those certain housing units would have it during unlock times. Take minimum security inmates, for instance. They unlock at breakfast time, and then they don't have to lock up again until 1 o'clock, or I believe it's 1 o'clock. So you have like 7 to 1. You got 5 hours there. They could be using that. Now, excuse me. There are fees that are associated, depending on what you're doing with the tablet. There are fees that are associated. There are some free components too. But I had already figured that out regarding our current population, who would be offered tablets, and how many tablets we would be getting from GTL. And it was a ratio of less than 1 tablet per 2 inmates. And I know that from talking with the folks at GTL, their norm is 1 to 6 ratio, 6 inmates to 1 tablet, and they don't have people that are beating each other up for a tablet. We're going to have a 1 to 2 ratio.
How about lock sheets or anything? I was thinking about that. Is there a lock sheet where you'd be able to
There-
tell
yeah.
this inmate use it from this time to this time?
Yeah, and also, of course, electronically, everything is recorded as well when you enter your information, your sign-on information, when you log on and when you log off it.
I'm just personally, I'm a little concerned about how do you police the possibility of somebody giving a tablet to another without signing out? That's
If I can answer that question, the technology is there. So GTL has the technology in place to both record the password and then photograph the user. So the technology is available. The problem is, unchecked, it doesn't do much good. And that's why I'd suggested some policy in place to check, even randomly, because currently we know there are abuses where the phones are used inappropriately by pressure on an inmate who has more money on the books, or a weaker inmate or a more vulnerable inmate to give up his password or her password. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is a simple policy to randomly check it. The technology will support it.
I'm going to suggest that in the event we table this motion now, the warden gets in touch with GTL about these issues, because,
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody's here, can we maybe
oh,
call them?
okay, because, maybe we can develop a system to address these concerns that we don't know. Perhaps they can audit electronically to see if, for instance, the two different tablets are dialing the same phone numbers, or
Yeah, can we call them?
correlate that with telephones. They can have periodic password reentry during use where they'll photograph, and maybe we can put the responsibility on them with the use of technology to perform some of that services that they can do quite easily, and we don't have the manpower to do.
Is there any other questions for the warden? If not, I'm going to ask the representative from GTL to come up, please. Thank you, Warden.
Okay.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for allowing me to be here, but due to the security nature of some of this stuff, the only way I can really answer the question is if we can go to some sort of executive session or something like that.
Can I ask-
Happy to comment on any of this, though. I have a lot of information I'd love to share.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Would GTL be willing to renegotiate the contract to address Attorney or District Attorney Powell's concerns with regard to holding the county harmless in the event that an inmate destroys property?
I believe that's already in the contract. We don't charge the county for that. We're going to try to collect that from the inmate. If we can't, then GTL knows that's a cost of doing business.
All right, so
Sure.
regardless of whether it's in the contract or not, you're not opposed to that amendment to include it in the contract?
I am not, sir.
Okay, so then if we added number 19, telephone tablets and secured messaging shall be monitored for content, make sure that the contract has the hold harmless agreement, and then we'll discuss the final issue addressed by District Attorney Powell with regard to, I guess, random checks to make sure that the proper person is utilizing that, and you indicated you could do that, just not in a public forum?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other concerns?
Why don't we just finish the rest of the prison board meeting, and then right after that, sir, we'll have an executive session with you, if that's okay.
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I second the motion to table it until we have these issues resolved.
Okay, since there were so many questions regarding the security and the implementation of other security measures, I would need a motion to postpone the vote on this implementation of the tab until the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes carry it. So, sir, you'll be available after our meeting, we'll discuss that? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Before we adjourn? The opportunity for the public to address the board.
Joan Hodawana, it's 101 Penn Avenue, Scranton. I'd like to readdress the issue of the GED program. Last month, we heard from Jane Augustin, I believe her name is, and she mentioned that 82% of the inmates enrolled in the program completed the program. I hope I'm not misquoting her. But I would like to get a lot more information on how the program is doing for many reasons. One, I firmly believe in the power of education, inmates or non-inmates. I think that for those who do not have a high school diploma, giving them an opportunity to complete their education, at least to the level of the GED, is something that may help them never enter the prison system again. And that's certainly something we want to try to do. But we need a lot more information so that we can assess the effectiveness of the GED program. If it needs to be tweaked, find ways to tweaking it. For example, let's assume the prison population is 100 people, just to make the numbers easy. And let's say 50 of those 100 do not have a high school diploma. So you're looking now at a population of 50 people that might be eligible for this GED program. Of those, some might not be in the system long enough, or there may be other issues why they're not going to enroll in the GED program. So we want to capture, though, the maximum number of people who could profit from a GED program and try to get them enrolled, okay, and then track how successful is the training for that group. Who are we not capturing? No pun intended. You know, I mean, are we able to get everybody in that might profit from a GED program? If our statistics aren't very good, what are we doing wrong, or what could we do better? You know, things like that. I know poor Warden Betty is just thinking, oh God, another statistical requirement. But I think this might be valuable. And I was very happy to hear you say that one of the things you would do with the tablets is, you know, upload GED materials. I think that's fantastic. Kind of thing. But having been a victim of robberies twice in my life, I would like to do everything reasonable to make sure I don't have a third experience like that. And I'm all for helping people, giving them a helping hand, but not necessarily a free handout. I think a GED program is helping them in a way that's responsible to the taxpayer. But again, because GED programs do cost money, we need to be looking at it carefully, making sure it's as effective and as efficient as possible, and we're getting the results we want. If there's ways to improve the program, let's do it. But that requires us having a lot more data. And I know the program's been resurrected only recently, so it's relatively new again. But without trying to pose too much of a burden on Warden Betty and its staff, if, you know, at least once a month we could, you know, have some kind of feedback on where the program stands, how many people who are eligible are enrolled, things of this nature. Okay, and the public, especially those of us who support the Scranton Public Library and try to give you books and other materials, if there's anything we can do to help, please ask us. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just follow up on that real
Yeah,
quick?
please, if you
I'm
just
Jane
want to
Augustine.
comment on some of her concerns, maybe?
We actually have resurrected the GED program. We have made numerous changes with the support from the warden over the past year. Initially, we started the program, we were doing it for 90 days. Ended up being that 90 days was too long. A lot of folks were leaving quicker than what we could get them through. We have reduced the program to 60 days. One of the biggest costs that we run up against, of course, is the cost of the test. And getting folks to that test, if they do not finish though, however, while they are inside LCP, if they follow up with us on the outside, Outreach is actually paying for the test for them because they started on the inside. And that is not coming out of prison commissary funds, that's coming out of a separate fund that we have garnered for GED costs. We have to date, anybody that wants to get in, we have not had any issues getting them in. It is kind of open-ended up until the last couple of weeks before we test, obviously, because we have to make sure that they have enough time to get all the education that they need to pass the exam. We do have some folks on standby. When we have seats available to test, we will test if they're ready. Anybody that requests any kind of GED information from us, we have packets, we get them to them. So at this point in time, I'll have a report for you for next month with all the numbers and where we're at.
If I may ask, how do you encourage it? Do the counselors encourage the steps to get the information? How do you distribute it? How do you
Well,
promote it?
we tell everybody at assessment time. We meet with all the individuals that are county inmates within 7 to 10 days of admission. Immediately, if we notice that they do not have a GED, we give them all the information. At that time, we encourage them to go. If they show up in other classes, we will actually encourage them to go to GED instead. Because GED is a time commitment, they will have to give up some of the other classes that they may go to just because we have to get them through, 60 days. You're basically leaving them an entire high school education in 60 days. They may have to make some sacrifices. Some inmates are not willing to do that. Some are. Some are extremely motivated to get the GED. Some are not. But we just do the best we can. But we've never denied anybody access. We've never denied anybody education, information, any of that stuff.
Anybody have any questions for Jean?
So you feel as though it's a success so far?
Well, and I think the bigger benefit is on the back end. We get these folks out, now they have a GED, trying to get employment for them is significantly easier than without one. But we've also had some others that have already gone back to school. I have a couple already enrolled at, I have 2 at Johnson and 1 at Lackawanna. And these were folks that probably were never even looking at going back to school.
Great work. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to address the board?
Yes, I just have a statement, something I heard. Norma Jeffries, and I'm a Scranton resident. And it was very interesting hearing the discussion about the tablets and all. And it was good to hear that. But something, I don't remember who said it, sent up the cackles in the back of my neck when they said that this is going to be a very lucrative contract for GTL. And I thought, ew. So they're going to have a very lucrative contract on the backs of the inmates, and they're going to walk away with the golden goose, with all the money in their pocket, taken away from the inmates. And what does the county gain from this, other than the inmates having access to the tablets? That's what prompted my question.
My understanding that we do generate revenue, like we do for the phone service. Warren, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Norm. Just so everyone knows, we can't wave a magic wand to know exactly what the increased revenue would be for implementing the tablets, but we're kind of projecting $3,000, $4,000 a month for the county. I'd never looked at what GTL would get. So money does get made by individuals, including our canteen account, or, I'm sorry, let me take that back, that money, because it's essentially, the phone money goes into the county general fund. So it would increase things about $3,000 to $4,000 a month for the county.
And the question is, so would that be a part of the ongoing reports that will be given as to how much money was generated from the use of the tablets, how much GTL gets versus the county?
If I can. I believe that those reports, and Mr. DeBillio can correct me if I'm wrong, are part of the monthly report that's audited by the Controller's Office, and I believe it would be in there. I can't answer that definitively, though.
My staff is
No?
saying that part's not going to be in there.
Oh, okay. I mean, we could always do that at the order of the prison board. We can always get the number and say what's in there. We could do it if you want us to.
Mr. Soffanelli, could we do that?
Sure that falls within those parameters. We'd have to look at that.
Right.
Could you look at that, please? Okay. Anyone else? Members, other business? Okay, we are going to go into an executive session for a little while, and then we will come back and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.